There are moments in life when nothing adds up. You pray, you work, you try, and somehow things still fall apart. You start wondering, why me? You see others getting ahead while you're still stuck trying to make it work. That's the part of life nobody prepares you for. The in between, the uncertainty, the confusion. But that's also the exact place where God teaches you to trust Him. Because trust doesn't grow in comfort, it grows in confusion. When life doesn't make sense, God isn't punishing you, He's positioning you. You're not being buried, you're being planted. The dirt you're under is the same dirt that will produce your growth. But you've got to learn to stop asking why and start saying, I trust you. Because sometimes the explanation comes after the elevation. You can't see what He's doing now, but when He brings you through it, you'll look back and say, now I get it. You've got to stop expecting life to be logical when God is spiritual. He works in ways beyond human understanding. He moves people, shifts timing, rearranges circumstances, all for your good. And just because you don't see movement doesn't mean He's not working. The soil looks still, but the seed is growing underneath. That's how God works, quietly, powerfully, faithfully. Sometimes you'll be in a place where you don't know what tomorrow looks like. The bills might not be paid, the relationship might not be fixed, the healing might not have come yet, but that's when trust gets real. Because trust isn't believing when it's easy, it's believing when everything inside you wants to quit. It's saying, God, I don't see it, but I still believe you're doing something. You've got to understand faith without trust is incomplete. You can have all the belief in the world, but if you don't trust the timing and plan of God, you'll live frustrated. You can't have peace and control at the same time. The moment you let go, the moment you release it to God, that's when peace enters. That's when you start sleeping again, smiling again, breathing again. Every season that makes no sense is still part of a perfect plan. God doesn't waste time, pain, or tears. When He allows something, it's because He sees something coming that you don't. You might not understand it today, but one day you'll see why every delay, every disappointment, every no had to happen. Everybody wants strong faith, but nobody wants the fire that builds it. You can't develop trust in comfort. It's built in struggle, formed in pain, and proven in patience. When life pushes you to your knees, that's not the time to give up. That's the time to look up. Because that's when God is teaching you how to depend on Him, not on yourself. You can't learn to trust God when you always have a plan B. Sometimes He has to strip away your options to show you He's all you need. The struggle is not punishment, it's preparation. You can't handle the blessing if you haven't been through the breaking. There's a version of you God is building through the process. Stronger, wiser, humbler. The pain you feel today is the training ground for the strength you'll walk in tomorrow. You don't grow faith on the mountaintop. You grow it in the valley where the tears fall and the prayers feel unanswered. You see, every great move of God begins with discomfort. Look at anyone who's ever done something meaningful with their life. They didn't get there through ease, they got there through endurance. You've got to stop despising the days that stretch you, because those are the days that shape you. The fight is never wasted. The struggle is never wasted. God's using it to build a foundation that won't collapse when the blessing comes. When you're in the middle of it, it won't feel like development. It'll feel like destruction. But you've got to remember, a seed has to be buried before it can grow. The deeper the planting, the greater the potential. That pain you're carrying is proof that something powerful is being birthed. Every tear you've cried is watering your next season. You've just got to hold on and trust that what God started, He will finish. The more you struggle, the more you discover how strong your faith truly is. You'll realize that what used to break you no longer moves you, because you've learned to trust differently. You've learned to stop panicking and start praying. You've learned to stop doubting and start declaring, I know God's got this. That's what the struggle does. It upgrades your trust. You can't skip this part of the process. You can't pray away the stretching season because that's where God builds the capacity to carry what's coming. If He gave it to you too soon, it would crush you. So instead of asking Him to end the struggle, start thanking Him for trusting you with it. Because if He's testing you, He's also preparing to bless you. We live in a world that teaches control. We plan every move, every step, every outcome, and when things don't go our way, we panic. But that's not faith. That's fear in disguise. Faith doesn't demand control, it releases it. The moment you let go and say, God, I don't have to understand it, I just trust you, that's when your peace returns. Because peace doesn't live in control, it lives in surrender. You've got to stop thinking you can outsmart God. He doesn't need your strategy, He needs your surrender. When you try to control everything, you block His flow. You end up frustrated because you're trying to carry something that was never meant for you. Some of y'all are losing sleep trying to fix what only God can handle. You've got to stop managing miracles and start trusting His movement. When you release control, you make room for God to work. You give Him space to align what you can't see. Sometimes God will even let your plans fall apart to show you that His plan still stands. You thought you lost control, but in reality, you were just never meant to have it in the first place. Control is rooted in fear, but trust is rooted in faith. You can't operate in both at once. You've got to choose one. If you truly believe God's got you, then act like it. Stop worrying about how it will happen, who will help, or when it will turn around. God knows what He's doing, and He's never late. You're going to drive yourself crazy trying to make sense of things that only God understands. That's why the Bible says, "Lean not on your own understanding, because your understanding is limited, but His wisdom is infinite." You can't see the full picture, but He can. So take your hands off it. Let Him do what only He can do. The freedom you're looking for isn't found in fixing it. It's found in trusting it. The moment you stop trying to play God and start letting Him lead, that's when peace floods your life. That's when doors start opening without your manipulation and blessings start coming without your control. Trusting God doesn't mean you'll always feel good. Doesn't mean you'll always understand the path He's taking you on. Sometimes trusting God feels like walking blindfolded through a storm. You can't see the destination, but you've got to believe you'll make it through. God never promised comfort. He promised purpose. And purpose comes with stretching, with pruning, with pressure. If you're uncomfortable, you're in the right place. That's the place where God does His best work. There will be days when everything in you wants to quit. You'll say, God, I can't handle this. But that's when He reminds you, you're not supposed to handle it. I am. He lets you reach your limit so you can discover His power. The place where you stop is the place where He starts. And that's why trusting God feels uncomfortable. Because He's not trying to make you cozy, He's trying to make you capable. When God calls you higher, it's never easy. He'll call you out of the boat, away from what's familiar, into the unknown. He'll tell you to take a step that makes no sense to anyone else. And while others are watching you sink, you'll realize you're walking on faith. Sometimes the only way to grow is to go. You can't wait for comfort to move. Faith is moving even when you're shaking. Trust will take you into rooms you don't feel qualified for. It will have you saying, yes, when you're terrified inside. It'll have you standing in front of giants with nothing but a stone in your hand. Because God never needed your comfort. He needed your courage. He can't elevate what's stagnant. So if He's stirring things up, it's because He's preparing to lift you up. You've got to understand comfort zones are where dreams die. The people who trust God the deepest are the ones who dared to step out. You'll never see what He can do until you step into something that scares you. You can't play it safe and call it faith. If you want God to move in your life, you've got to be willing to get uncomfortable. So when it hurts, when it stretches, when it challenges everything in you, don't retreat. That's not a sign you're losing. It's a sign God's growing you. You're not being broken down, you're being built up. Trust doesn't always feel good, but it always produces good. Everybody loves open doors, but nobody talks about the ones that slam in your face. The job you thought was yours, the person you thought would stay, the opportunity you were counting on, gone, and you're left wondering why. But what if that closed door wasn't rejection, but redirection? What if God shut it because he knew something you didn't? You see, we cry over what we lost, but God celebrates what he saved us from. Sometimes you're praying for God to open a door he already closed. And he's saying, stop knocking. That's not your door anymore. You can't trust God's plan and fight his process at the same time. If he closed it, he's protecting you. The very thing you thought you needed might have destroyed your peace, your focus, or your destiny. You've got to trust that his now means something better is on the way. A closed door isn't the end of the story, it's a chapter shift. God doesn't take something from you without the intention to replace it with something greater. You may not see it yet, but his redirection is divine. He closes doors to move you from where you are to where you belong. Sometimes it takes a shutdown to make you stand up and move forward. You've got to stop romanticizing what God already released. Stop trying to resurrect what he's buried. Some of the things that left weren't meant to last. They were lessons, not lifetimes. You're holding on to pain that was designed to push you closer to him. The more you cling to the past, the harder it becomes to grab hold of the future. When you trust God, you learn to thank him for both the open and closed doors. You start to understand that rejection is protection, delay is development, and disappointment is direction. God's not being silent to hurt you. He's being strategic to help you. Every closed door is a clue that something new is being prepared behind the scenes. So stop standing at the door that's shut and start walking toward the one that's about to open. The same God who said no. Today is preparing a yes that will make you forget every season of frustration. You just have to trust that the closure was part of the construction. Pain doesn't mean God's not present. Pain often means he's closest. You see, when everything's going right, we praise casually. But when life hits hard, that's when praise becomes personal. It's easy to say you trust God when life is good. The real test is when it's falling apart. When the phone rings with bad news, when the deal fails, when your heart breaks, that's when trust becomes real. You can't ask for growth and then run from the pain that produces it. The same way muscles grow through resistance, faith grows through struggle. God doesn't send pain to destroy you, he allows it to develop you. Every trial carries a teaching. Every wound carries wisdom. Sometimes God breaks you down just enough to rebuild you better. When it hurts, that's when prayer becomes your oxygen. That's when you learn to depend on God in a way you never have before. You'll realize people can comfort you, but only God can heal you. You'll realize pain isn't punishment, it's purification. He's removing the things that can't go where he's taking you. Some of your greatest growth will come from your hardest seasons. You'll look back on nights you thought you wouldn't survive and realize they made you stronger, wiser, more grounded in faith. Trusting God doesn't mean you won't cry. It means you believe he'll wipe your tears. It doesn't mean you won't hurt. It means you know the hurt has purpose. Sometimes God allows you to feel the pain so you can appreciate the promise. If you never walked through heartbreak, you wouldn't recognize healing. If you never faced loss, you wouldn't value restoration. Pain gives power to your purpose. Every tear you've cried is watering the ground for your next victory. So when it hurts, stay faithful. When it breaks, stay believing. When it burns, keep walking. Because every step through pain is a step closer to purpose. Trust him even when it hurts, because that's when he's doing his deepest work. Trusting God isn't a one-time declaration, it's a daily discipline. Every morning you wake up, you've got to decide, I will trust God today, because life will throw things at you that challenge that trust. There will be days when your faith is high, and days when your fear is louder. But that's when you remind yourself, trust isn't a feeling, it's a choice. You've got to train your mind to believe even when your emotions don't agree. Some days, everything in you will want to worry, but you've got to choose worship. Some days, doubt will scream in your ear, but you've got to answer it with faith. It's not about perfection, it's about persistence. You may waver, but don't walk away. The enemy loves to attack your consistency. He knows if he can shake your trust, he can steal your peace. That's why you've got to be intentional. Wake up, pray, and remind yourself, God's got me. Say it out loud until your spirit believes it. The more you speak trust, the more it becomes your reality. Trusting God daily doesn't mean you understand his plan. It means you believe his heart. It means even when life changes, you know his character doesn't. You trust his nature even when you can't see his hand. That's real faith, believing when there's no evidence yet. The moment you stop trusting daily, fear takes over. Anxiety grows in the space where trust disappears. That's why you got to keep feeding your faith. Read his word, remember what he's already done, and remind yourself that he's never failed you before. If he brought you through then, he'll bring you through again. Every single day you choose trust, heaven takes note. Every God, I still believe. You whisper in pain becomes a seed that will grow into strength later. It's not about having perfect faith. It's about having persistent faith. Comparison is a thief. It robs you of peace, gratitude, and progress. You can't fully trust God while envying someone else's timeline. Their path is not your path. Their blessing is not your blessing. God's story for you is tailor-made. When you compare, you insult the uniqueness of what he's creating in your life. You don't know what someone went through to get where they are. You see the highlight reel, not the hidden tears. You see their success, but not their surrender. That's why you've got to stop scrolling and start focusing. Because while you're watching someone else's story, you might be missing the one God's writing for you. Comparison blinds you to progress. You'll start thinking you're behind when you're actually right on time. God's not slow, he's strategic. He doesn't move according to your clock. He moves according to your calling. You can't rush divine timing. When you trust God, you start celebrating others instead of competing with them. You realize their win doesn't threaten yours. God has enough grace, favor, and blessings for everyone. What he's doing for them is proof that he's still working, not proof that he's forgotten you. The more you compare, the more you complain. But the more you trust, the more you thank. Gratitude shifts everything. You stop asking, why not me? And start saying, God, thank you for preparing me. Because you'd rather wait for your right moment than rush into the wrong one. So keep your eyes on your lane. Your story is still unfolding. You're not late, you're being refined. Trust that your journey with all its ups and downs is exactly what it needs to be for what God's building in you. We all want things fast, success, love, purpose, breakthrough. But God's timing is not like ours. You might think you're ready, but he knows when you truly are. Sometimes the wait isn't punishment, it's protection. He's not delaying to frustrate you. He's developing you for what you prayed for. When you rush the process, you ruin the product. You can't microwave purpose. God takes time to shape character before releasing calling. Because a blessing given too early becomes a burden. That's why he slows things down, not to hurt you, but to prepare you. Trusting his timing means believing he knows when the door should open. He's not just preparing the opportunity, he's preparing you to handle it. The delay is often divine. He's aligning resources, people, and moments you can't see yet. You've got to stop comparing your chapter 2 to someone's chapter 10. God's timing is custom, made for your story. You might feel behind, but you're actually being positioned. He's not late. He's on schedule. You just can't see the full calendar. When you start trusting his timing, peace replaces pressure. You stop forcing what's not ready. You stop chasing what's not meant for now. You start saying, if it hasn't happened yet, it's because it's not the time yet, but it's coming. The moment it is your time, nobody can block it. No delay, no denial, no doubt can stop it. When heaven says, now, everything shifts in your favor, That's the power of trusting his timing. The silence of God can feel like the loudest pain. You pray, you wait, you listen, and nothing. No sign, no sound, no direction. You start to wonder, did God forget me? But silence doesn't mean absence. The teacher is quiet during the test, not because he's gone, but because he's watching how much you've learned. Sometimes God goes silent to strengthen your trust. He wants to see if you'll still worship when the music stops, if you'll still believe when the evidence disappears. Silence reveals whether your faith depends on his voice or on his character. In the quiet seasons, he's not ignoring you. He's observing you. He's seeing if you'll obey without updates. Will you keep walking when you can't see the next step? Will you stay faithful when there's no feedback? That's where spiritual maturity grows. Silence can also be God's way of shifting your ear. Maybe he's not speaking because he's waiting for you to quiet the noise around you. Sometimes his whisper is drowned out by your worry. You've got to learn to be still and trust that even in silence, he's moving. You'll realize that silence is where trust becomes sight. The moment you stop panicking, peace takes over. You start noticing little signs of his hand, the right person showing up, the right word coming at the right time. That's God's quiet work. When you learn to trust him in the silence, you become unshakable, because even when he's quiet, you know he's working. Even when you can't hear him, you know he's near. That's the power of real trust. Faith without trust is empty. You can believe God can do it, but until you trust that he will, you'll never experience the impossible. Trust is what activates miracles. It's saying, even if it looks impossible, I believe God will make a way. Every breakthrough begins with trust. You can't step into the supernatural with a skeptical heart. You've got to believe beyond what you see. When you trust, you release heaven's power over your situation. Mountains move, chains break, doors open, not because of what you can do, but because of who you trust. You've got to understand, trust is not about having it all together. It's about giving it all to God. When you reach the end of yourself, that's when his strength begins. You'll realize that every limitation is an invitation for God to show up. The impossible becomes possible when you stop trying to make it happen and start trusting him to do it. Miracles don't require perfect people, they require surrendered ones. You don't have to have the plan, you just have to have the faith. Every time you trust God with something impossible, heaven responds. You might not see it instantly, but something shifts in the spiritual realm. Trust makes way for power. Trust builds a bridge between your problem and God's promise. You'll see things happen that logic can't explain. You'll look back and realize, I didn't do this. God did. That's what trust does. It unlocks the impossible and lets God show you he's still in the miracle business. When you finally learn to trust God, everything changes. The situation may not change right away, but your spirit does. You stop living in panic mode and start living in peace mode. Because peace doesn't come from knowing how it'll work out. It comes from knowing who's working it out. Trust quiets the chaos. It silences the what-ifs. You stop needing to control, explain, or predict. You just rest in the fact that God's got this. And that's a peace the world can't give. That's a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, but on confidence in his plan. You'll find yourself walking through storms that used to break you, and somehow you're calm. You'll face the same challenges, but this time you're steady. Because when you trust God, fear loses power. Worry loses grip. Anxiety loses its voice. Peace is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of trust. It's knowing that even if the road twists, the destination is still secure. You can sleep in the storm because you know who's in the boat with you. When you stop trying to understand everything and start trusting through everything, peace becomes your default. You stop rushing. You stop stressing. You start resting. Because trust is the anchor that keeps your soul steady when life shakes. And that's where true freedom begins. Not in having every answer, but in knowing the one who does.